Hello everyone, welcome to Clarity 16.0.1 Supportability and Feature Training. I am Vib Mehrotra, and in this section we will be covering the customer enhancements. So as part of this release, the following customer requested items have been enhanced. The first is the resource date of hire and date of termination are API enabled. This will allow these two attributes to be displayed in the modern UX. We have the ability for the users to set their own language and locale in modern UX. Both of these came directly from the customer innovation panel, and their numbers are listed right there. The changes to how auto-assigned access rights are calculated is also updated as part of this release. We've made some navigational improvements to hierarchies. We are introducing the blueprint grid as part of this release. We will also have the ability to do translation of blueprint setup items into other supported languages. And finally, we are increasing the module tab size within the blueprint so that within the investment, the users can see more of their tab details and know which one to click on. In addition to these, there are several other customer requested enhancements that again came directly from the innovation panel. They are listed on your screen. We will not cover them in this section, as each one of these will be covered in their respective sections, such as the enhancements made in the task management. Will cover the field level security for task and the edit tasks and so on. The roadmap section will cover the enhancements or the customer requested enhancements in there. And then the status report enhancements will cover the customer requested enhancement for status report safe filter. The reason this is important is, of course, the product management team has set up multiple channels for our customers to engage directly with us. These include the weekly product management office hours, where we discuss on a weekly basis with our customers the different items that are important to them, and from there determine any of these quick wins that we could include. So the date of hire and date of termination is one of those quick wins that came from the customers. The monthly roadmap review and the monthly design session, studio sessions are additional sessions in addition to our monthly innovation panel. That's where all our customers get to vote on various enhancements requests that we will then take in and pretty much commit to providing those changes in the product itself. Several of these that were listed with the numbers came from those innovation panel that we are delivering, and we'll continue to do so in release over release. So let's first talk about the resource date of hire and date of termination. This was deemed as one of our quick wins, and essentially what we did is, for these two attributes in the resource object, we have API enabled them, and we have populated the API alias for them. The values are as follows. The date of hire will have date of hire, and date of termination will have the date of termination, where the date is lowercase off, and then termination both with the upper letters start. These two dates, after making them API enabled, will be available in the following areas in modern UX. They'll be available in the projects add staff page, the staffing staff grid, and the staffing allocation timeline. The staffing allocation timeline is new in the 16.0.1, which will be covered in the staffing section of our training. These dates can also be edited in the cross object grid, which would be the staffing workspace, provided the user has edit access. The next change is the changes that we are making to our auto assigned rights. Several of our customers have been discussing with us that they would assign a resource such as a manager to a project, and by doing so, that user automatically is given an auto right, such as the project manage auto right. By getting that auto right, the user's license is then automatically tracked as a full functional right because that user has full edit access. However, customers have requested that they will make those assignments mainly for tracking purpose and not as much as for the user to go in and make the changes. So this skewed their license count. As part of that request from the customers, the change we are making in 16.0.1 is all assigned auto assigned rights will now be treated as view only. These changes is only for license calculation. There is no functional impact, which means whatever once a user is assigned these auto rights, whatever function they could do in Clarity, they will continue to be able to do that in 16.0.1. This is only how we track those licenses get counted from a license perspective. If a user, if the same user is assigned an access right manually, and that access right that was assigned manually is tracked as full or restricted, then their license count will then be tracked as full or restricted. So any manually assigned right will continue to function as it did in the past. The slight navigational changes we are making to hierarchies is as follows. The first is that the back button, when you go inside a hierarchy, the back button to go back to the hierarchies list is being moved up and is standard across rest of the Clarity. So the location of it is now standard across Clarity. The second change we are doing is that when you are within a hierarchy and you navigate from that hierarchy, if you navigate to a specific investment, then in that investment, the back button will list the specific hierarchy name that you came from, thus allowing the user to go back to that respective hierarchy. These are again minor changes that were made, but were done primarily to be consistent across the application. Another request that came directly from the customer innovation panel was the ability for a user using modern UX to be able to set their own language and locale. Prior to 16.0.1, this could only be done by a user by going into the classic UI. Now this setting is available within the user's setting. They can go ahead and set their language and locale themselves while still being in the modern UX. One thing to note that once the user makes these setting changes, they will have to re-log in to see the reflected changes. In 16.0.1, we are introducing the blueprint grid. This is the first version of it that is coming out. It is coming out in a beta state. The blueprint grid will continue to exist along with the existing blueprint listing. So you will see two tiles in the administrative section of the modern UX. The original blueprints will continue to be there, and the new one will be called blueprint grid, and it'll have the beta tag. When you go inside the blueprint grid, you will see all the existing blueprints that have been defined, whether it's the standard one or a copy of the standard and customized. So all the blueprints will continue to be displayed there. The blueprints, from there, the user does have the access to open and edit them. The user has the ability to view all those blueprints using the common grid functionality, where they can see the different columns, the data for those. They can group those values. They can add or remove the different data points, which is the columns, or use the flyout to see additional information, as well as save different views. The only functionality that is not going to be available in the blueprint grid, the common grid functionality that will not be available in this blueprint grid, is the plus icon. So you will not be able to just click on the plus to create a new blueprint. The only way to continue to create a blueprint would be to make a copy of the existing one and then editing it. There is context sensitive menu available. So by right mouse clicking on a given blueprint, the user will have the option to make a copy of the blueprint or just make a blueprint default. There is also the capability to select one or multiple blueprints, and based on the selection, the new actions menu will be available. That if you only select a single blueprint, the action menu will allow you to make a copy or make a default for that blueprint. If you select multiple blueprints, you will have the option to then do bulk editing against it. It is also important to note that in the blueprint grid, we will no longer be displaying the associated templates, using, and last used by fields which were available in the old blueprints listing. When inside the blueprint grid, the user does have the option to continue to edit, so they can edit the name within the blueprint grid itself. However, they will have to open the blueprint to then edit the rest of the information. The name can be edited in the grid as well as in the flyout, and the user has the option to use the actions to do the editing, to make a copy or to make a blueprint default, as well as they have the option to do bulk edits. Starting this release, again based on customer request, we are now providing the capability to translate blueprint configuration information. The user will now have the option to translate the following blueprint settings. They can translate the blueprint sections, the channel names, and action names. The way the translation will happen is exactly how you can do the attributes renaming, which is the user logged in will set their locale or their language to the language they want to do the translation, and then make the necessary changes. In addition, we are also going to now support the mix case within the blueprint sections. In the prior release, anytime a section was created in the blueprint, the section name was always uppercase. Now the users have the option to create a section with mixed case, so upper and lowercase, or only lowercase if they want to do so. In addition, as part of this, when you create a new section, we will not default a name, and the user will have the option to populate the value for the name. We will highlight it if the value is blank with a red underline indicating that no name is being provided, and a section will not be created till the name is provided. Finally, the change we are doing for the module tab size increase is customers that create channels can give the channel their own name. However, after too many tabs being added to the blueprint, you will notice that it is hard to read the name of the channel clearly because it's all condensed. Moving forward, we are giving the ability, we've almost doubled the length of the size that we will be displaying. So if you have a long channel name, we will be able to display quite a bit of it. In the previous releases, we were only displaying 10 to 15 characters. Moving forward, starting 16.0.1, we will be displaying anywhere from 25 to 30 characters. So long channel names would easily be displayed in the blueprint modules. With that, let's see the product in action. So the first thing I am going to show is the two attributes that are blueprint enabled. So here I am in 16.0.1. I am in Studio, and I've navigated to the resource object. And in here now I can go in and look at the attributes for the resource object, and there is the date of hire and date of termination. When I click on the date of hire and scroll down, I can now see the value that has been populated for the API attribute ID. The same thing can be seen for the date of termination, the value being populated. To see these two values in Modern UX, now I can go into the Modern UX, and I am going to actually go inside a specific project, and within the project, if I go to staff and I click on the add staff to add a specific resource to my project, I now have these two values available to me. By default, they're not added to any views, so for demo purpose I have manually added both of these values to my view. So you can see date of hire is available as well as date of termination. Both of these values are displayed, and both of these values are editable provided I have edit right. In my case, I'm going to go ahead and add a date of termination for Jason Berry because I know Jason Berry will be leaving the company, so I have the option to go ahead and populate that from right here, which will then be set in the system. If I want, I can then remove the same value because again this is editable. The same value is also can be edited from the flyout. Next, if I go into the staffing grid, I can see the same two values there. So right here in my flyout, in my staffing grid, I can see that the resource date of hire and date of termination is there. If it is populated for any of the resources, then it'll appear right there. I can select and go into the details and then see the same values from right here. Alright, the next I wanted to show are the rights changes as to how we calculate the rights. For that, I'm going to go back to Classic UI. I'm going to go into my administration license information, and here I can just search for any right that is assigned automatically to a user when they are added to a specific field within Clarity. So by searching for all auto assigned right, I can see that the way we track all of these now moving forward would be treating each one of these licenses as view only. So if I assign a user as a manager to a project, they will be auto assigned as a project manager with this right, and we will treat it as view only. However, if I go in and to a specific user and manually give them project edit right, then in that case we will treat it as a full license, because now you're giving a user the edit capability to edit one or multiple manually. So it's not an auto assign, but you are granting somebody a right, so in that case we'll treat it accordingly. The next I wanted to show is the hierarchy navigation enhancement. So for that, I'm going to go back to the Modern UX. I'm going into the hierarchies section of the Modern UX, and here I'm going to open up a specific hierarchy, and the first thing you would notice is that the back button has been moved up. So now the back button that used to be next to import in the prior releases has been moved up and is standard across or is following the standard across the Clarity application. So I can now click back on this hierarchies and go back to the list. Similarly, if I go into hierarchies, I can double click on any investment in here, and by doing so it takes me to that specific investment, and now the back button that used to display in the past was just calling it hierarchies, but now we have the specific hierarchy name displayed right here. So I can now click back to it, come back to my hierarchies, and then click back and go to the hierarchies grid page itself. So those are the two minor enhancements made to the navigation for hierarchies. The next piece that I'm going to show is the individual locale setting that I can do. For that, I am going to log in as a different user. So here I'm going to log in as a different user that wants to set his locale to Spanish. So by logging into the system, by default the user is set to English language with English locale. However, the user now can make their own changes by going into their settings in Modern UX, and then under the general section, now we have the settings that the user can change their language as well as locale. So I'm going to go ahead and set the language for this user to Spanish. Once I've set the value, I have to log out and re-log in as this user in order for the language changes to appear. So now I can see the language is changed to Spanish. So all the out-of-the-box fields and attributes are now being displayed in Spanish. All right, I'm going to go ahead and log out as this user. The next item that I wanted to cover is the blueprint grid, the new blueprint grid that is introduced in 16.0.1. So I'm back logged in as myself, and I navigate to the Modern UX Administration, where I can see that there is the new tile called Blueprint Grid. This Blueprint Grid, when I navigate inside, will show me all my blueprints in a grid layout. This is this is our common grid component, where you have all the functionalities of defining your own views, doing your filter, exporting it to CSV, adding or removing the columns. So anything that you do or do not want to see, you can easily control by adding or removing them from here. We have the default value, which is the value that indicates if a certain blueprint is default, or the value that if a certain blueprint is standard, is now made as a checkbox that will be displayed right here. These are non-editable fields. The only thing that you can edit is the name of the blueprint, and that is done so by using the pencil or the edit icon next to the name. Clicking on the name will open up the actual blueprint itself. I also have the option to just do a right mouse click on a specific blueprint, when thus making the context sensitive menu appear. And here I can make this blueprint either default, or I can make another copy of this blueprint. When I make a copy, the new entry is made with the same name as the original, and I can then go ahead and change the name of it. I can also edit or select a specific blueprint, and by doing so, the edit and the action button appear on top. The action button will show me the same two actions that are available, which is either I can make a copy of my blueprint, or I can make that blueprint default. If I select more than one, then the action button will disappear, and I only have the edit button to now do bulk editing. I'm going to go ahead and unselect those. And next, let's talk about that if I want to go inside a specific blueprint, I can look at the different blueprint, I can edit the blueprint, and I can even do the language. So in order for that, I'm going to look at my project blueprint, which is my project default. So the first thing I'll show is that here in this blueprint, my section names are in mixed cases. So that's automatically for all the out of the box. You will see them now in mixed cases. I have actions in here that have been defined in English language, and I have modules that have been defined in English language. Now, if I want these to be translated to another language, I would need to log in with a user who has the language set to the language I want to do the translation. So either I log in as that user, or I change my setting here. So in this demo, just to keep it simple, I am going to log in as a user that has language set to Spanish. So I'm going to go ahead and log in as Alex Garcia. His language is set to Spanish, and we'll go ahead and see that again. So right here, the language is set to Spanish. This user has admin rights, so is going to go into the administration, is going to go into blueprint, and I'm going to go into my same project default. And in here, I am going to make the language changes to few places. One, I'm going to make the change to my section. The second, I'm going to make a change to my action. And then the last, I'm going to make a change to my module itself to all have Spanish language. All right, so the first is to my section itself. Right now it is in English and it's called Project Summary. I'm going to change this to be in Spanish so that it makes sense to me. The second, I'm going to go ahead and go into my actions, and I'm going to change one other process, which is the invoking stage gate process, to something in Spanish that is for invoking the approval process. And again, it's as simple as I am just relabeling it. So in this case, again, all I did was just edit the name, populated my value in Spanish, and that's it. It is just as simple as editing it. So now I've changed the action to be in Spanish, and then the last change I'm going to do is for my modules. I'm going to rename my dashboard module to be in Spanish, which would be Tablero de Mandos. And now that I've made the three changes, I'm going to go ahead and publish my changes. Once done so, let's go ahead and validate how this data will be displayed. For that, I'm going to go into my projects, and I'm going to go into a specific project. Right. So the first thing is, you would notice right away that my section is now in Spanish. The section name that I'd renamed to be in Spanish is now displayed right there. The second is my actions. So when I go into my actions, there is my Spanish name. And the last is my module, which is all the way at the end, is right here. So my OKR dashboard that I'd renamed to be displayed in Spanish is now displayed in Spanish. So I can see my values in Spanish. To validate that this does not impact the users that have English language, I'm going to go ahead and log out as this user, and I'm going to go back to myself, and my language is set to English. So right here, my language is set to English. I'm going to go into my projects, and let's go to the same project just to be consistent. The first thing you will see is my project summary is, or the section that was called project summary, is still being displayed in the English language. So it is still in English. The second is the process that I had for invoking the stage gate is still in English for me. So the Spanish name that I had put in is only for this user that have language in Spanish. And the last one to validate is my OKR dashboard. So you can see the name is still OKR dashboard in English as I had set. So all of those are still in English for the users that have English language. The last piece that I wanted to show is right here in the same screen, which is I have a channel with a very long name. In this case, the channel name was Corporate Executive Dashboard, and you can see I can see mostly everything about it. So this, I have quite a few tabs, and the last one is a very long name, and I can still see majority of that name. So we now display definitely long name channels. And that concludes this section. Thank you, everyone.